How's it going, guys? I take the stairs because I choose to understand differences rather than separating them.
I take the stairs because healthy communication is the soil where growth takes root.
I take the stairs because in a world that can often feel bleak, I'd like to remind people that there's always hope, and I never want them to feel alone on their journey.
I take the stairs because shortcuts don't build strength. Every step is a choice to grow, be patient, and rise.
Welcome to a very interesting episode of We Take the Stairs. Thank you so much for joining us today. Liz is our usual intro person, but I'm taking it today, I guess.
Oh, that's why you looked at me like
That's
that?
what I did. I looked at you like that
Well, you
because
said that whole introductory statement.
I always go after you.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well,
'Cause you
welcome
have the
to
beautiful
We Take
voice.
The Stairs,
Thank you.
episode 5,
That's right.
Liz, don't let nobody take your
where
job.
we
Come
will
on.
talk about incarcerated men.
That's right.
All right.
That's the topic.
Take it away, Rachel.
Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
So today's episode is going to be one that many people might go inward in their thoughts and think about things that we've been taught in the world. And while this is necessary at times, in the judgment of others, the Bible is clear. In Matthew 7, Jesus says, "Judge not, that you be not judged, for the judgment you pronounce will be judged, and with that measure you use, it will be measured to you." Today's subject surrounds men who have been incarcerated. While I admit that this isn't an easy subject to discuss, I will say only that Jesus gave 2 specific instructions regarding these things. Love God with everything you have inside of you, and love one another. Jesus never said that we were to be discerning in who received this love and forgiveness. He just told us that this was our directive. The world does give us certain laws and rules which we, in fact, need, but love and forgiveness come from God above. So the scripture that I really thought about when I was thinking about this episode was simple. I didn't even really take thought. He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone. And if I had like a little invisible stone, I would have to lay it down because I clearly am not without sin because I'm a human being. And so with that truth and vulnerability, we can begin this conversation in truth and love.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right. That was a perfect intro to set up the conversation that we're going to have. And I don't recall if we've been doing this every episode, but the little subtopic that we have is how incarceration disproportionately affects men and how that absence ripples through our families and communities. So understanding that we all have some type of connection potentially to the incarcerated population in the United States or abroad, and we may have, a lot. I know I do. I have a lot of, stories and experiences tied to incarceration, specifically the incarceration of men. But I just wanted to emphasize that that particular vein of conversation of how it disproportionately affects our male population versus our female population in the United States, and how that absence of the exorbitant amount of males that are imprisoned in this country affects our family dynamic and the dynamic in our communities. But I think it is interesting and important to talk about our connection because this topic literally shifted the trajectory of my life in so many ways that I think out of all the episodes, this one is the one that maybe I would say I was looking forward to the most, only because of the way that for so many years of my life, I was kind of, didn't even have the thought to consider or think about incarceration rates, what people are going through as incarcerated individuals, and just that whole demographic was so far from my mind until like literally a pivotal event changed that and made it the primary focus of my life for about 5 or 6 years. And even still today, it's something that, once you go through something once that shakes you like that, it's always a filter that you're viewing the world through. So I had that type of experience, and I'm curious to know, before we get into, the meat of it, what everyone else's experiences are with, like, direct experiences with either, knowing someone incarcerated, navigating, the system or whatever the case might be. But I would love to talk about that first.
Yeah.
And
I think it's actually cool that you said that it was in the back of your mind for such a long time, of even thinking of the statistics. And just statistically speaking, about 2 million people incarcerated in the United States, the land of the free. It's an incarcerated nation that
oh
we
yeah,
live in.
more than any other nation in the world,
And
we imprison more people.
absolutely, 93% of them being males.
Yeah.
Which out of that 93%, the majority are Black and Latino. I could go on for days with statistics. I actually had the privilege of serving in New York State as the director of operations for a company called sendapackage.com, where we serviced inmates and we sold care packages to inmates: food, clothes, cosmetics, sneakers, boots, and music. We had an exclusive deal with Universal Records to sell music in the United States prison system. While serving at Send a Package, I spoke to a lot of mothers, a lot of girlfriends, a lot of children. If the statistic is 2 million incarcerated human beings in the United States, there's about 4 million children with parents who are incarcerated. So we partnered with Russell Simmons' nonprofit, In Arm's Reach, serving children with parents who were incarcerated, mentoring programs, tutorial programs. And I saw the effect firsthand of how hard it is for families to really make it with someone behind bars. Very difficult times, not only for the incarcerated, but actually I found it a lot harder for the women and children that were affected on the outside with the presence of a man in the home. And it shifted my life for the better to really try to make a difference in making people really understand the root of the problem. And the root that I found was that it's prison for profits that are really ruining the systems in this country. Does anyone know when the first private prison was opened in the United States?
The first private prison, I did look that up.
It's 1984.
Yeah, it was not too long ago. And
I was born in 86.
right?
Since then, I'm 39 years old. Since then, the amount of people incarcerated has went up about 194%. Could look that up but I'm pretty sure it's almost 100, almost 200% that the amount of people incarcerated has increased in this country, not only for political reasons, social reasons, profit reasons, but it's just unsustainable. And the domino effect that it has on the families on the outside is really heartbreaking. And it definitely needs to be addressed a lot more than what it is, because we're really failing.
When you say addressed, what side of addressing are you referring to? Addressing from a system perspective or addressing from a response?
From a humanity perspective.
Got you.
A system, I don't think a system can fix it because a system has created it.
And through what avenue has a system created it? Because I know every business is built off demand.
Correct.
And what demand do we have in our society that prisons are becoming a business?
So I learned a lot send a package. And prison beds are looked at like real estate. Those beds are filled and someone is making $1. Like when you rent an apartment, you station an inmate and house them at a facility, and that facility is making money. It's not as simple as you did a crime and you're sitting in prison serving and being corrected for your wrongs. You know? There's an underlying, I would call it a demon that's behind the systems at hand.
Not only that, the municipalities are making money. Cities and counties that agree to have the prisons built in
Correct.
their area are getting benefits from the federal government or state government in order to have
Funding.
funding in
Yeah.
order to have the prisons in that area. On top of that, inmates are collecting massive amounts of debt from being in prison. They're getting charged for their food,
Yeah.
for things that they just need to survive that are provided to them through the prison system, but it's not provided for free.
No.
Inmates come out with debt for the
Interesting. I had no idea.
yeah, and
didn't
it's
know
a
that
either.
huge issue.
We were called the cell blocks Amazon.com, if that gives you perspective. So, for example, if I was married to Liz and I was incarcerated, Liz would have to go online and order my food, my clothes, cosmetics, while I'm incarcerated. Being home with the children, right? Still trying to provide and show love for the inmate.
So how then are we addressing something from a humanity perspective when the system is the issue? If based on what we're explaining, system is the issue, but we have to address it from a human perspective.
From a human perspective, I feel, again, the outside, because we're not going to change the system. It just is what it is. And I feel like in a democracy, it's hard to say that. But on the outside, I feel like we need to do a better due diligence to help serve the families, the children. They're innocent. These children did nothing. These, a lot of these inmates, to be honest, are nonviolent drug offenders.
Okay, here's where I think is going to be, this is why I wrote the introduction,
Yeah.
right? Because let's say you haven't had experience with somebody who's been incarcerated or you haven't been incarcerated. I think it's easy to be out here in the world and think, well, they did the crime. They should have known it. And to some degree, again, accountability, we have to take accountability. So we're not taking that away. But here's where, this is why I wrote the introduction. I recognize that the three of you probably have more information about this because I have two people I've known in my life that have been incarcerated. And so that's it. Other than that, I really haven't, other than actually having gone into the prison to visit a friend that I grew up with who needed a friend at that time, which was an extremely eye-opening experience, by the way. It's teaching a lesson, but I will agree that it's a dehumanizing experience. Maybe that's for a reason, but I don't know. I'm not saying I agree or I don't agree. I don't want to take that stance.
Yeah.
I have my own personal thoughts, but I'm not going to actually share them. But here is where I think that people are going to say people who commit crimes are going to, they know that they're going to go to prison. I mean, people used to cut hands off. People used to have to, if you stole bread, like they'd cut your ear off. They'd stone people. I mean, having punishment for action is nothing new. So here is where I think as an audience, we're hoping that people are going to take a deep breath and remember forgiveness is from God. And we are supposed to forgive one another, and we're supposed to understand one another through love. So I just wanted to say that before we continue, because I know that perhaps I might have had those same thoughts before I had that experience and seen that these are actually human people in here who've made a mistake. And not everyone is the worst or the best thing that they've ever done. We've all made mistakes. I mean, I'm so sorry. Driving here, please don't come pull me over, officers. Driving here, I was going a little fast because I thought we were going to be late because I was late. That is illegal.
Like mother,
So
like son.
again, this is haha. Yes, my older son is. Jesus, he actually got a ticket yesterday. It was pretty. Anyway, so I had to put my stone down, my pebble, because even though we sit and we think that we're on the right side, we've all made mistakes. We all, every day, unless we're going 45 miles an hour in a 45 or 65 in a 65. And I'm not saying that committing real heinous crimes versus doing small petty crimes is that there's not a difference there.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that each human being makes mistakes. And I hope that we're listening with that truth.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing quickly, Junior. But I'm by no means making excuses for anybody or saying lift up every prison wall. But to call them correctional facilities, and there's nothing really being corrected.
Right. It's a gross mislabeling.
It is
Correct.
definitely a
what's
gross
happening.
mislabeling of what.
And we're talking from a majority sense, right? Because there are some programs.
Programs, yes. Prisons, no.
Yeah.
But, I mean, one can say, and we don't want to trump anyone's experience, right? One can say that they have been through the prison reform system and have been, reintroduced back to society in a different mindset because they have gone through a corrective scenario in the prison system. Now, obviously, I'm coming from a completely different perspective. I was not born and raised in the American system. I was migrated into it. So there are a lot of things that I do not know or understand about the prison system. But I think it is valid for us to talk on the point that there are some reforms that have happened through the prison system that are good
Absolutely.
reforms. So I was just asking the question if this is from a major point of view that majority of prisoners do not get, reformed through
Even
the system.
statistically so, that is
Got
the
you.
case.
Yeah.
So, as we all may or may not know, incarceration in this country goes back, as at least the boom in the increase of numbers of incarcerated individuals goes back to the abolition of slavery. So no more free labor from slavery. So now we need to make sure that we have access to free labor as a, government constructed to build off of the backs of free labor. So convict leasing, prison labor, and what we have now, like we talked about, the privatized prison industry and the prison industrial complex, those things were specifically, thought of and implemented to make sure that there could still be a cheap labor source in this country to drive capitalism. So going back to that, in the South, especially, not to say it didn't happen in other areas of the country as well, but there were what was known as black codes, where there were specific local and state laws that were increased specifically to round up black people who used to be slaves and who were now, sharecroppers or whatever they were doing to make a living during that time period of transition. So these laws were put in place, like the loitering and vagrancy law was put in place just to round people up and lock them up so they could get some time out of them working for free while they were locked up. And these laws were, disproportionately applied to Black people in America because of the chain of events and the reality that existed at the time. And then on top of that, how are you as a poor, disenfranchised African American person supposed to do anything about that, either collectively or individually? Because even though slavery was abolished and there was this new, wave of structure coming into place in our country, things, were changing at a snail's pace depending on where you were. So there was really no response or retribution that could be implemented for people finding themselves in this situation. And once the powers that be, realize how successful that was, then it was like a snowball effect. As time shifted, there needed to be a new way to make this old foundation ring true in a new social construct. So, like the war on drugs, Ronald Reagan and his presidency, in that
Yeah.
4-period time, the prison population, I think, doubled just in less than 4 years with the implementation of this campaign, the war on drugs. Who's bringing the drugs to the poor community? It's like this cyclical thing where you have, government agencies specifically implanting certain drugs and not, offering economic determination in communities for Black and other people who were the minority population to have ownership and control over their own businesses, their own property. So these cycles just continued. And then that, of course, made it easier and more palatable for, the rest of America, white America, living out, in the suburbs and not in the inner cities where, crime and drugs were running rampant, because they could distance themselves and say, oh, look, the president says it's a war on drugs. And almost it was even looked at like, this is what we need to do to make these communities better from the outside looking in. But no one really truly understood what was going on unless you were experiencing it and living it, and knew people who were going through this particular experience, generation after generation. It's just something that people see on the news and say, oh, yeah, got to crack down on crime. Of course, who doesn't want that? Got to crack down on drugs. Of course, who doesn't want that? But not knowing what happens after the fact, or how laws are, constructed and sentences are, constructed to target certain individuals, certain demographic groups, to spend more time in prison, to be arrested at a higher percentage rate, and all of those things. So it's like this reinventing of a very negative wheel by our government to ensure that capitalism thrives, and that just being one, part of it. It's a huge part of what runs this country.
Yeah. I think the numbers, again, just to look at the numbers, the population grew 36%. The incarceration rate grew 194%. That's 40 years ago. We're not talking 100 years ago.
Right.
We're not talking 200 years ago. We're talking 40 years ago.
I think this is a big, not even I think, there's a big reason why my pursuit was to be a lawyer. Just to prefix this, I have a degree in public administration. So everything that is being talked about is knowledge to me, but not because I have knowledge don't mean I don't need to ask questions.
Right.
So for me, I think, yes, from a theoretical perspective, I do understand the full length of history. And though history is facts, I think you guys have such a practical knowledge of the system that I prefer to sit back and listen.
Yeah.
Me too.
Now, the reason why I ask the questions that I ask is because, I mean, one has to ask, like, who, and this is the bigger question, right? And I don't know if it's taboo to say this anymore, but what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Something started it, and we know based on history what started it. But how is it that we end up in the same scenario over and over and over again? Not only that, there's such a big increase almost yearly that even prisons are overpopulated, and we know this for a fact, right? At what point is it that it's not a human thing, it's a system thing? And how do we get in there and figure out ways to kind of, to the sub question, help the families who are affected? Because I know there is a target, and based on history, on Black males. And we know there is a target on males in general, right? Because again, 93% of the prison population are males, right? So if we know what the target is, and we know then at that point we can pinpoint it as a system issue, as a system error, how do we help? How?
I think
Well, imprisoning people didn't start in the 80s. This has been
No,
for as long as
and we
time.
were
It just
talking
became
about
very
history.
profitable.
Two sides,
Right,
to
profitable in
everything.
America.
Men do commit more crimes than women. That's a statistical fact.
Right.
yeah.
So, there's two sides to every issue that falls underneath this topic of incarcerated men, which is why I emphasized in the beginning that we talk about how it affects families and communities.
Right.
Because we could talk for a whole year sitting here in this room without a break about systemically how do we address this, what are the ways to kind of overhaul or reevaluate the prison system in the United States. But the after effect, the way that it affects families and communities, I think is something that we can tie back to one scripture. So in the scripture that I found for this episode is Hebrews chapter 13, verse 3. Continue to remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. And there's just not enough initiative for people to want to give their time, their resources, even their prayers or concern to people who are incarcerated, because there are projects that we've all probably heard of, like the Innocence Project, where they work on exonerating people who were wrongly, prosecuted and convicted and serving time in prison for crimes they didn't commit. Yes, way too many people in prison who are innocent.
Yeah.
Let's not even divulge, get into that. But those are not the only people in prison who need our attention, our love, our forgiveness, our care,
right.
our efforts, our resources. Just because someone is in prison for something that they did and they were found guilty of by, the process of going to trial and being found guilty, a jury of their peers and all that, it doesn't mean they don't deserve the goodness of what the rest of us have to offer as members of the same society that they came out of before they went to prison and that they will be a part of when they get out of prison. So that missing component of just humanity and compassion toward not only the inmates themselves, but the people who love them, the people they're related to, the people who are tied to them through either, familial ties or community ties. But, there's only so much that, one mother with a son in prison can do, or one sister with a brother in prison can do. Communities have to own what we've allowed to happen.
Yeah.
And do something about that collectively.
Yeah.
I think that's more of a truly human problem. I mean, let's just remove for the fact that somebody is in prison, okay? How many people really stick around when something goes wrong in life? So
Jesus.
Thank
Jesus
you.
as
That's
in
right.
Jesus?
This is
Oh
it.
my God, Jesus. This is a
Well, but
serious
Jesus
issue, or
is the
Jesus
bar,
as in
man. I mean,
Jesus?
We serve a God of mercy and grace.
Okay, my friend, I'm talking about humans.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying, how many of us have experienced? That was a good one, too, though. Jesus
love
sticks.
that.
Jesus loves us all.
Yes.
That is true.
A huge problem just that we all face as human beings, that all the human beings I know, is that people always say people will kick you when you're down, or
That's
people
right.
will leave you when you're down.
It's a fact.
So if we're talking about that and we're out here and I'm having a really hard time, I'm telling you, the people who stick, I am the most loyal human being to those people,
Yeah.
because you don't find people who stick. So if we don't find people out here who stick with us, how in the world are we going to change an entire mindset to look beyond themselves and say, hey, wait a minute, I too have made mistakes.
Yeah.
I had to learn a very difficult lesson. I grew up with the guy. So here's my experience with prison, okay? Because I don't actually have a lot. I'm from Tulsa,
I thought you
Oklahoma.
said you weren't going to give your experience.
No, I said I wasn't going to give my opinion.
Oh.
I thought you did time.
Huh?
No, I'm just...
Would give me a hard time.
Hey, don't judge a book by its cover now.
Boom,
You
boom,
never
boom.
know.
You never know. Rachel might have been a little, you know.
Clink, clink.
You never know.
So I had a friend who I had grown up with, and lost communication with for like 2 decades. And our community was small and we were all really close. But even though we lost like communication, because you grow up, I don't know, we all have like a special affection for the kids that we grew up with. At least I do. Even if I haven't spoken to them. So he got himself into some serious hot water, made some mistakes. And it was all over the news. It made national news. God bless him. When he did it right. But he, I thought to myself, I felt really compelled to reach out. So I wrote a letter and he wrote back and we communicated. And I remember one of the things that he says that was most difficult was that people abandon you. His own wife also, angry and justifiably, abandoned him in that time of need. I've got no judgment there. Trust me, I have nothing. But for not just speaking, understanding his perspective, and he felt very alone. I ended up going like twice. I had never, ever even like seen the front of a prison. It just wasn't anything, that I had ever done. And I remember walking in, and I mean, every door clanks. And it's heavy. It's not just like a soft closing. It is a hard closing. You go, they are sitting there waiting, or you're waiting, and like there's a space between the chairs. They can't get up. They can't get their own food from a vending machine. You as the visitor have to go and get the food from the vending machine, and they can't even get up and use the restroom. And if you accidentally touch the yell, and you're like, oh, and I'm sitting there freaked out because I'm not the kind of, I don't like trouble. I'm like the most rule-minded individual, but I thought, okay, a friend needs me, I'm going to go. And it was sad. It was sad to me to see the women who come in and they miss their guys, and the moms who visit their sons, and just, those are the people that are being visited. Imagine the people who aren't being visited.
Yeah.
It's lonely. It's a lonely system.
Is it? I used to go to bus stops in New York City where women and children had to drive up 8 hours up and 8 hours back to go visit mom and dad in jail. I want to touch on something that you said earlier about the subsoil, bedrock is where you are when you're in prison, is the rock bottom. No one to visit, no one to stand for you. You were in hot water. And I want to encourage people to bring these inmates and these families to the living water, the only one that is there when you have no one, and that is Jesus, because they do have faith. And the prison cell is one thing, but the prison of your mind is the one that can truly break you.
Sure.
And faith can get you out of that. So many programs out there trying to help, I know I worked hand in hand with Amnesty International with the solitary confinement, just inhumane situations. One of the guys in our office has done 8 years in solitary confinement. You know how crazy that even sounds, to come out of prison after being in solitary confinement with yourself and your mind for 23 hours a day? Mm-hmm. There's just no...
What would the objective of 8 years of solitary confinement be?
Like,
how is that
correcting
repairing
anything?
or correcting
to be honest,
anything?
the prison system is extreme.
Yeah.
There's no going around it.
Yeah.
And for a lot of this conversation, that's why I kind of wanted to move away from, and I know we have to give statistics to show the importance of what we're talking about, but I think we have to also talk about that it's hard for both parties, right? Yeah. Because we talk about forgiveness, and yes, some people, do things that they know will allow them to end up in prison. So that's a reality where you leave a community, sometimes kids, wondering, where's my father? Where's my, we're talking about men in this situation. Where's my father? Where's my uncle? We have to drive 8 hours to visit. I had a cousin in prison, and we had to think about going there for at least 2 to 3 days of planning. Think about like stopping your entire life to visit someone who made a decision
Right.
to do something
Or didn't make a
or
decision.
didn't make a decision to do something. So it's hard for both parties. How do we remedy that? How do we figure out a way where there's a balance? Because it is going to be hard in prison, but it's also hard out here for us figuring out a reality, because you affected our community making that decision, and you are affected in such a way that it affects us too. Because hearing you have a conversation about what you're going through in there is also hard.
Yeah.
Seeing you in that condition is also hard. Knowing the kind of freedom you had out here, personally, my father, and this is something I hid for a long time, because like you created such an image for yourself that to be in, this is also another conversation of why people make the decision to separate, right? To be associated with someone who's in prison it breeds conversation. It's like, well, maybe you are.
Prison and incarceration is still a very taboo subject.
Yeah,
it's not something
absolutely.
people want to own or be, connected to in any proximity of anything that has to do with
Absolutely.
someone who is incarcerated or has done something. They don't want to explain it. They don't want to,
It's a lot.
connect themselves
So,
to it.
especially if it's a father.
And then we
Yeah.
tap into our last week's episode on entertainment. Entertainment's not doing any due diligence for anyone, at least in the Black and brown community.
Well, that's a stripe. If you go to prison
Right.
in the
It's-
Black and
it's
Brown, it's a
glorified.
stripe. It's like,
Magnifying.
yo, you've been through the ringer. Like, you know the streets. You got this.
Instead of magnifying and glorifying the king, we're magnifying and glorifying the streets. No, it's street life. It's thug life. It's, it's all this gangster stuff that is perpetuating your child to end up in the same situation that you're in. I had a huge problem with the miscommunication that the music was having on the not only the inmates, but the children of the inmates. You know what I mean? Like, to sit in a cell with the same tape, and I was a hip hop junkie. It's crazy that that brought the junkie out, because the streets are magnifying, smoking, drinking, partying, the strippy. These are the cool things.
The
This
strippy. I've never
The
heard that.
strippy is
Trying to keep it
crazy, bro.
It's
The
true.
strippy is crazy.
Molly
Y'all-
Perkins says, "Where you want me to go?"
Don't put this on no t-shirt. Don't put this on nothing. The strippy
I'm
is
just saying, it's
crazy.
the facts. It's the facts.
Liz, have you
The
heard
things-
the strippy before?
I haven't heard the stripper,
Okay.
but I knew exactly
like,
what
you
he
know
was
what I
I
was
haven't heard the
talking about.
strippy.
You know,
I had
know
no
we-
question.
yeah.
Come on now.
No, serious.
But
Yeah.
it's being glorified, and I
No,
was
yeah.
I was in the streets.
Yeah.
I
But see,
thought
these are like open drugs. This is the
Right.
opening to
Yeah.
why some crimes are committed, because you introduce a guy to a reality where you could go out to the strip club and yada yada yada. It start with cheating, then he feels emasculated in his household, then he feels like he has to do a lot, then start to go through mental health issues, and then loses his job and feel like he has to do everything to figure out
Right.
how to make ends meet for his family, and that leads him to a criminal perspective,
And then you
where he
end
starts
up-
to do things
and then
outside of
You go to the
law.
correctional facility, you get corrected, and you come home, and nobody wants to give you a job.
Well, that's also a different
that's a whole
conversation
other
for
episode,
or
yeah,
you
that's-
go,
another
or you
episode.
go
Yeah.
inside and you find the necessity of immediate association with a group that's going to help protect you while you're in there. So then you've built an allegiance, and then when you come out, there's all types of baggage that comes along with that, and it's hard to walk away from that type of connection that was made under those circumstances when you're going back to your same community.
Yeah.
And it's known that you're affiliated, so now you've got something to wake up and prove or live up to every day, because you've associated with yourself with a particular group or gang or whatever, and then those expectations only, pervert that cycle of criminal behavior and being around that same
Absolutely.
Right.
element. And from the perspective that I have, being involved with individuals who were incarcerated was totally through entertainment and media, and it was through the arts. So when I lived in Tampa, I had a spoken word radio show that was weekly, that came on Saturday nights, right between a old school R&B and a hip hop show. So on my first week on the air, the next week I got a letter from this brother who was listening from inside of Florida State Prison. I don't remember which one. But when I read the letter, I'm like, I didn't even know people locked up can have radios. I didn't even, like it was literally that's how ignorant I was. Like, what do you mean you listening from prison at 11 o'clock at night with a radio? Like your own. So I was just totally blown away by the fact that there was this unspoken for, almost voiceless population that I could communicate directly to through the through the airwaves, and let them know that they were not forgotten, that they were seen, that they had someone who was advocating for their well-being, their livelihood. And I started to select poetry that was what I knew they wanted to hear or would like to hear. They started writing in and sending me their own poems, and I would read them over the air. They would then, tell their family members, call in during Liz's show so you can shout me out so I can hear it. And over time, one of the inmates wrote me a letter and said, you got to come perform at the prison. I'm like, perform at the prison? Like, I had no idea that I could even go into prison to do anything. So I'm like, okay, how does this happen? And at the time, I didn't have a car. I'm like, that stereotypical, like, starving artist, college student or whatever. So one night on the air, this woman showed up at the station after my show, and it was his wife, and she gave me cash to rent a car, to get gas, and to get to the prison. So I didn't do anything. All I had to do was submit my information for the background check. And when I got to the prison, the first prison I performed at was Hardy Correctional Institution in Hardy, Florida, all male maximum security prison, about 1,600 inmates. And I showed up there by myself, not knowing what to expect. And it was one of the most pivotal moments in my life, because not only was it, so positive and inspiring, and I basically got to sit back and watch the men perform. They had bands, they had poets, they had singers, they ran the whole show. And then I did my little, 30 minutes of poetry, and they planned everything. Like, the guards were even just kind of like chilling. The inmates hosted the show, did all the sound. I mean, everything. Wow. Organized the whole event, everything. So when I left there, I said, I need to figure out how the hell I'm going to do this as much as humanly possible, because it filled me up so much.
How to heaven you're going to do this.
Yeah, okay.
It's not the heaven.
So then I put together a poetry prison tour. And for the first month, for the first time it happened was in February. And we did like 8 prisons in 7 days. And when I say we, I mean just like me calling up my artist friends, like, I'm going to go to this prison. And I'm just calling the prisons like cold, like, hey, can we come do some poetry at the prison? And they're like, we don't have any money to pay you. Like, we don't want no money. We just want to come and do poetry for your population. So we would just throw our gas money together and go driving around the state doing as many shows as we could. So each year it just grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it was like 3 months out of the year where we were going for Black History Month, National Poetry Month, and Women's History Month, and just going, whether it was me and one other person or me and 15 other people, we would just submit the background checks and go. And during this process, not only, was I getting like a gazillion letters, from the incarcerated population, just because they were seen, just because they felt acknowledged, because there was an exchange. On top of that, I cannot tell you the amount of times where if somebody would get out of prison, they would, come up to the radio show just to say how much the show kept them going. They would, I remember one time I was in Walmart and it was late at night, and I saw somebody taking a picture of me. And I was like, can I help you? And he's like, you live straight, right? And I'm like, yeah. And then he just
You live straight,
automatically,
right?
just started going on and on about how
Yeah.
much, and he just couldn't believe that he saw me like out in the world. And instances like that are just a tiny little tip of the iceberg, how just making a shift in your perspective and your awareness and how that ripple effect goes on forever. It's like I compare it to like being a teacher, how you never know how you impact a student's life. It's the same way if you just give a little bit of your time and your energy and your prayers and your resources, even just if it's a little bit, the lasting effect of that could literally save somebody's life.
Yeah.
And that's not hyperbole. The connection, how we talked about people being abandoned and their own family members just can't for whatever reason or won't for whatever reason, that human connection can literally save someone's life.
Yeah.
That's such a big takeaway.
Yeah.
And it is incredible to hear you say that, because for me, I, in my own self, have a revelation. Because, listen, I am one person who is, I have a lot happening. And my father tries to call every single day. And one thing I hear from that entire thing that you just said is that a little communication goes a long way,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We are everyone's poetry, who is incarcerated. And no, it doesn't take for us to spend 3 days to think about going into the prison to visit them, but answering the phone to say, hey, I know where you are. I know what's happening. I am still here, but I cannot have a full conversation right now. I'm busy.
Yeah.
And I've found so much importance in that, even to answer the phone and be like, hey, Dad, I can't talk now, but I just want to let you know that I'm here.
Why?
And
Oh, sorry.
he's like, yo, I just want to hear you sometimes. And that's all it is. And I think we put such a burden on ourselves when someone is incarcerated that we know, in that we start to become so selfish in that, oh, you made that decision and affected our community and family, so you're going to have to deal with that consequence. And the reality is that no communication is also we ourselves affecting ourselves, right? Because that's a major part of who we are. No matter, we can't run from it.
Right.
That is a major part of who we are. So even hearing that he's okay or that person is okay, believe it or not, change the perspective of our day. It's like, wow, he's good. He's not in any trouble.
Yeah.
He sounds like just hearing me excites his day. And I think, I know, and I talked about how hard it is for both parties, that just a little communication. It's not something you have to commit your day to or commit your hour to. Just answer the phone or give them a call and be like, hey, I have a busy day today. I just want to just tap in with you to say, how are you doing? You're good. I would love to hear about it in the next 2 days when I have some time, or the next 3 days when I have some time. And even if you forget, if they call, because they're going to look forward to that 2 day, even if they call, answer and be like, I know I promised you 2 days, but I just want to answer to let you know I'm good and you're good too, but I need a little more time.
Yeah.
And hearing you say that, it's like going back, thinking about all the times that I performed at different prisons over the course of like a 5.5 year time span. The times where the show had to get canceled, or maybe we submitted background checks, and because whoever the warden was at that time denied all the background, even though we just went to the same prison, 3 months ago or 6 months ago, different warden, we don't want it, we're going to deny everybody's background check. Or, if something happened inside the prison and then they have to cancel the event, the the feeling of like let down, like we wanted to go and offer that so badly that anytime anything disrupted it, it was just like, man, like just the way that what we had to give was literally our words, our music, our presence, and to not be able to make that happen, knowing how much it meant to them. Or let's say somebody got put in a hole and the show came up, and then they'll write me a letter like, man, I was in the hole, I missed it, knowing that it's going to be probably a whole nother year or maybe never that they would get the opportunity to have that interaction again. And the way to kind of summarize that is like that cliche phrase, like just show up.
Yeah.
Show up.
Whatever that looks like, whatever you're able to do, just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's just putting a card in the mail.
Yeah.
Just show up however you can.
Yeah.
If it hurt too much to talk, write a letter. If you can't put the words on paper, just send a card. Send a
Yeah.
picture. But just show up.
Yeah.
What do you think, Liz? Sorry, before we do our takeaways, what do you think,
It's that
Liz?
time already?
Yeah, it is already almost.
Sheesh.
What do you
This is
do?
so
You look
good.
like you are ready to go ahead.
Yeah,
Just
Z.
get it out,
I just
my brother.
think we're present and we're present in the Holy Spirit. So I want to speak to the men and women incarcerated. We see you. We hear you. You're valuable. You're not worthless. You're worthy. You can achieve greatness. You will be free. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. Write to us. I know this will make it into the cells.
Oh, yeah.
I've had it firsthand with inundated with letters. These are talented, beautiful people
Yep.
Oh gosh,
that are
yes.
incarcerated. Amazing human beings with so
Absolutely.
many different talents, poetic, musically, the best lawyers,
Yes.
the best athletes,
Yes.
the best of
Artists.
everything,
Artists.
best artists,
Mhm.
best creations, God's beautiful creations. You know, Paul was incarcerated. You're seen, you are loved, you're amazing human beings, and I can't wait to see when you're free. So we want to send embrace,
Yeah.
present, here, now. I just wanted a little praise break for them
Yes.
because they
Absolutely.
My
they
question
need to be seen.
to you, and now to you, before we do the takeaways, is what would you want everyone to know that hasn't had an experience like we've had or have the knowledge that we have? So, like, for example, Liz has gone in. I mean, Liz, you went in for a number of years. Clearly you were fine. What was the mood inside the prison? Was it, it sounds like they were grateful.
When I tell people, that I did that for so long and that I did it independently, and sometimes it was just me by myself in an all-male maximum security prison. I worked with Matulu Shakur for a long time in federal prison. He was in a federal prison very close to me, and we put together a lot of events that literally had, us being investigated, for the first prison I ever performed at that I talked about. I was banned from going back there because someone in a white supremacist group recorded my poetry performance and said that it was going to incite a riot because the inmates were getting too riled up about it. So I was banned from going back to that prison until the warden and the staff changed. And then I was invited back about 4.5 years later.
Politics as usual.
So going inside, I never, not once, had any inappropriate comment, behavior, violent act. Never, not even somebody, like every performance you could hear a pin drop. I never in 5.5 years ever had any negative experience at any show unless it was initiated by the guards. And when I say that, say there was one time that stuck out to me really quickly where one of my poets said like, damn or hell in a poem. And the guards came like with dogs and tried to shut down the show. We were in a chapel and they came from the back with their canines because the person said a curse word in the poem. And the lady who was like not the chaplain, but she was an employee there. And she came to the podium. She had to be maybe in her 70s. And she said, there's no way that I'm going to let you shut this down when y'all talk to them like dogs every day. And because some poet is up here and they said the D word or hell, that you want to shut the show down, that's not going to happen while I'm here. And they literally backed off and we continued our show. But it was it was just something that let me know that in the moment, there is really no fear to be had when you're showing up purposeful. When you're showing up in your faith and when you're showing up on your own, principles about what is right and what is wrong. And I saw that time and time again with staff members who did support us coming in and doing poetry, even though it had, a revolutionary empowerment tone. It wasn't all like that, but the poets who did have that message, it was welcomed. It was, the love was reciprocated and the appreciation was reciprocated. So with that, I never had a negative experience. I never had a negative experience with an inmate, getting out of prison and coming up to the show or approaching me on the street, or I never had it, ever, not once.
So respect. Yeah, I mean,
It is
you
a
gave
thing
them
where,
respect.
yeah,
they
you
gave
have
you
to
respect.
understand that in a blink of an eye, this could be you. This could be me.
Yes.
You could go out there and drive and kill someone and be convicted of involuntary manslaughter and be in
Yes.
prison in less than 4 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
It can happen in the blink of an eye to you,
Yep.
to somebody you love
I think
right now.
there's such a beautiful essence when you're speaking about this experience. And I love that because,
I agree.
again, I'm coming from a different POV. And as you were talking, the only thing I could hear in my own soul is like, communication is peace.
yes.
Yeah.
It's just so peaceful to have communication. That's it. Because you went in there and they did everything in their power to not mess that communication
yes,
up.
exactly.
They were at such peace
Exactly.
to know that someone is communicating to me something that I know I need. Whether damn or hell is in there.
Right.
Like they're communicating something to me that I know I needed. So communication is such peace. And for me, that's a big takeaway. Like no matter how busy my day is, I have to, yes, did my dad do something that permitted him to be there? Absolutely, I can't lie. But that communication is peace. It's peace for him and it's peace for
Yep.
me to know that he's okay and to know that his son is okay.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I've been in prison to visit a cousin, and yes, there were some exchange of words, but to the point again, he turned back and looked at his mom, his sister, and his cousin, and he said, "What am I doing? What am I doing?" And that in itself could save someone's life.
That's why recidivism rates are so much lower for inmates who still have a connection to their families and to the people who love them on the
someone's
outside.
life.
Yeah.
It does save lives.
Saves life, even if it's for a second to have a phone call. That is the only thing I'm gonna say is just like communication is peace. And it goes in a very Christ-like way. Right? Like even when you have burden on yourself, the moment you allow yourself to communicate it with an earthly friend or God himself, that burden just lifts itself. And all of a sudden you have peace, all because you communicated. The enemy tries to shut us up from having conversation, from having communication, because the moment you are isolated is the moment he has control.
That's right.
Yeah. I think my message to those who don't or haven't had the experience of somebody who's incarcerated is we serve a God of grace and mercy. Have grace, have mercy.
Yes.
We are all, every single last one of us, sinners.
Yeah.
Not worthy
Yeah.
of his grace and mercy. So have grace, have mercy, have forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't for the person incarcerated. Forgiveness is for ourselves sometimes. Most of the time, when you learn to let that go and let God do what he does, because only he can heal those broken. Grace and mercy
Yeah.
Yeah.
every day,
Yeah.
every single day. Just have grace and mercy with those around you, with your neighbor, Love your God, love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Love those incarcerated because they are just like you and I.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people know what mercy is, but a lot of people really don't understand that grace is a favor that you do not deserve.
Say that again.
And that's what Jesus did when he died for our sins. He followed through fear, through everything that he felt as a human being while he was on this earth.
And never give
Grace
into it.
is a favor that you do not deserve.
And grace
that is
wins
what we
every
get
time.
every day. Yes.
Every time.
Yes, it does.
To something that you said, in that the forgiveness is not only for the inmate, because it is for the inmate as well, but also for us.
Yeah.
Especially to the families, to our point, it is very important for you to have that forgiveness, especially if kids are involved. Because
Mhm.
what we're doing is unknowingly communicating to the kid that it is not okay to forgive someone. It is not okay to understand someone's perspective.
And that it is okay to abandon
And that
someone
it
and
is
walk away
okay
from
to
them.
abandon someone. So they grow with this anger because there's this absence in their entire life. So it is important for us to communicate. It is important for us to forgive. It's important for us to have
With
grace.
whatever boundaries are
With
necessary.
boundaries,
This
right?
isn't
With
like a Disney World
absolutely.
approach.
I'm not
But
saying
yes,
gather the kids and
exact-
bring them to,
Yeah,
but like,
absolutely.
yeah.
You don't have to
Absolutely.
forget.
yeah, we have to watch what we communicate because
Yeah.
communication is peace, and it could be riot, right? It's peace,
Yep.
but it is also riot because we could be communicating something to a child that for the rest of their lives, they don't know what they feel, how to feel, and how to deal with it.
Right.
And they'll end up in the same situation
Yeah.
that you abandoned.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be forgotten. To be forgiven doesn't have to be forgotten,
Yeah.
I've forgiven myself millions of times for wrongdoings. I don't forget it. It sits somewhere.
It's a scar.
Right.
It's a scar.
It's a scar.
Many scars.
Yeah.
But I'm healed. I'm whole.
Yeah.
I've gotten his mercy today. I've gotten his grace today to be able
Yep.
to be here and admit my faults as a human, a sin, a human that sins.
Yeah.
And that's so common in the word is that when Jesus forgave someone or healed someone, he pointed out exactly what was right in front of everyone's face and says, even despite this,
Yeah.
I am healing this
Yeah.
person. I am forgiving this person. I am changing this person. And he specifically pointed out, Saul, you persecuted Christians, you murdered them. Guess what? Now here I am asking you why, addressing that directly. Here is the bleeding woman, who touched me? Who touched my cloth?
Even to the woman
Point
at
it
the
out.
well.
Yes.
You knew Judas was coming.
Exactly. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Every time he does not ignore or forget what's right in front of him. That's the whole thing that makes forgiveness powerful.
Yeah.
Is that no matter what, forgive. No
Yeah.
matter what,
No matter
show
what.
mercy and
Yeah,
grace.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. I don't even think we need to do our we take. I think we all gave
We
our
took
It's
it.
my turn
But your take-
because I
your
have something
take.
interesting
Yes.
to say here.
Yeah.
So, to me, this subject is sort of ongoing from the time that I was talking about my friend. I've had my own thoughts about it that have evolved, and it made me look at humanity differently. But most interestingly, it made me look at my own humanity differently because I'm not a perfect person. Here's the thing. Here's the biggest takeaway. There's absolutely no greater form of love than what Jesus showed to us. And love is the only divide. Love divides everything. You're either going to accept that you can be forgiven and you can be loved, and you in turn do your very best in your broken human way to also forgive and to love. But at the end of the day, Jesus is the bar.
Jesus.
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 Jesus. That's
Jesus.
There is
That was
The
so
right
good,
answer to
Liz.
every question.
So thank you for tuning in. And
Thank you.
you so much.
This
for-
was such a good episode, guys.
Yeah.
And we
Sticking
look
in with us,
forward
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
I miss those handwritten, beautiful
Yes.
penmanship.
Yes.
Write us.
Yes.
Write us.
Write us, please. Communicate with us.
Yep.
Send us your prayer requests, please.
Yep.
We're praying that we could love on you with our words and our actions and our deeds, and however we may serve our community. I think we are servants of the Most High King. I know we are servants of the Most High King, and we're super excited to continue to tackle these men topics. And I think we're having fun with this.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
let's keep raising awareness and
That's
being
right.
transparent.
Remember, the
and
next
loving.
season is about women, so
Yeah.
we're not forgetting
Yeah.
our sisterhood here. But right now we're talking about our brotherhood over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
was great.
Yep. Thank
Great.
you.
Yeah, we should bring this topic up again, from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Even we can have some guests maybe potentially, but yeah, this was a really good episode. And next week, based on our schedule, we're talking about body dysmorphia in men. So that'll be interesting for me to at least like research and get prepared for, because we talked about it briefly in our introduction episode, but it's not something that I have a lot of knowledge about. So I'm really interested in, diving into that topic, maybe, learning some new things from you guys' perspective and just from my own research. But I just love the way that each episode we kind of progress to a level of like we're in sync more and more every time we have a
Absolutely.
conversation.
Yeah.
We know when somebody's like
Study
waiting and
abundance.
got something to say. So it just it's coming
They have
together
black guys in
so
DC?
well.
Body dysmorphia in men
Dominican
is,
guy.
unfortunately, as a mom, something I've had to, a mom of boys. It'll be interesting. Usually, you know more about stuff than me, so
Who's to say by next week I won't?
you probably
Oh,
will.
boom.
I'm living it, like,
Listen,
and watching it.
Liz, you better tell you do your research.
Get your intro
I'm
back,
gonna
girl.
research I'm gonna research too, Liz.
Speaking of
Elizabeth?
research, what's the
Oh my
scripture of
gosh.
today's episode?
I read it. Continue to remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. That's Hebrews chapter 13, verse 3.
That was
And
a
on
good
that
find.
note,
Yeah.
we'll see you next episode, guys.
Yay,
Yeah.
we take
Bye.
the stairs.